This meeting is being recorded.
My goodness.
Just so you all know.
So it's over to me now, and it's a massive welcome to all of you. I think we've got a fantastic turnout, and it's always a real pleasure to meet everybody, really. Fantastic. And those of you who know us realize that some years ago, Graham and I bought this virtual Citroen pop-up coffee van, and we've been driving around in that van for the last few years, and we were particularly active, and I don't know how many coffees we made during the pandemic, but we made abundant coffees, and we kept, I think, hundreds of people connected during that time, which was a real pleasure and a delight to do. And as part of our pop-up coffees tradition, we run regular CEO forum and meetups in London, Oxford and Cambridge, which I'm sure Graham would be keen to talk to you about at any time. But as part of this Citroen driving around, we're always a delight to work with our dear friend Patrick, who has been a dear friend for many years. And he puts on this wonderful festival. We call it a festival of people, where I think Patrick was saying as he came in, there's about 1,000 people who turn up in the ether and all do great business together. And this is part of that festival. And we come on air a couple of times or a few times a day and give people the chance for serendipity to work, because most of us know that business comes from bumping into people more than it comes from getting a list and finding them. Somehow, I don't know whether it's fate or whatever, but somehow you often just bump into someone and they turn into your next best customer. So that's what this is about, is serendipity. And we as a format, we try to engage, entertain, and give people information. And today we're lucky enough to have Andrew come to talk to us about what he's doing. And the plan for today is I will talk to Andrew. We may have some questions, then we're going to go into breakouts where you can get close up and have proper close-up conversations with each other. So firstly, let me welcome Andrew. Andrew, and it's a delight to meet you, my friend. And maybe you could just tell us where you are, what you do, and maybe how you do it. So Andrew, welcome.
Thanks, Tony. As I put in the chat, I think I win the prize for travel the furthest, because by my estimation, I'm pretty close to the opposite pole of the planet to probably where Graham is sitting tonight. The down under region, Australia, New Zealand, I happen to be sitting in Melbourne, but I cover both territories of Australia and New Zealand, is hometown for me. It's where I was born and brought up. I've traveled the world and worked in many places, but the ecosystem down here has kept attracting me back. And when I say the ecosystem, I don't mean the kangaroos and the koalas. I mean the life science ecosystem, which is so rich. We have ridiculously overrepresented life science skills in this small part of the world. And we're part of Asia Pac, which we enjoy. But really, Tony, I'm here to answer questions and to talk about the region because I love it so much. And I'll tell you a bit more about what I do when you're ready.
Fantastic. So maybe, Andrew, to expand a bit, what do you actually do in the region? You know, what's your thing that you actually do?
Sure. The why for our business, why we came into existence, Tony, is because we recognize that there are a lot of very positive and strong deals that were never being done. And that might sound trite, but what I'm saying is that from the other side of the planet and from an ecosystem which is so much smaller than many others, we watched as our local entrepreneurs maybe failed through lack of experience. We watched while the big corporates of the world didn't quite understand how to do business down here, and or even the very human failings of just preferring not to work across 12 time zones. You know, that was a barrier to deals being done. And at the time, my partner and I were in two different parts of the ecosystem, and we came together to try and address that gap. So on a day-to-day basis, Tony, I guess you'd call us deal makers. We try to see everything that moves in the local ecosystem. And by that, I mean every emerging technology, every sparking research lab, every young entrepreneur or old entrepreneur. And we try and understand what their real offering is in the global market. And then we try and match them or find homes for them in the globals. But our business began with the globals, actually. We started life back nearly 10 years ago, working exclusively for global corporates in the other direction. So we would be trying to help them to navigate their way around the innovation system down here, to find things that were otherwise hidden, and for them to do deals too. So we're neither buy side nor sell side, Tony, but we are people that actually help deals to get done in the life sciences.
And just maybe, Andrew, what does the university system or the government pump money into early companies to get them going, or how does the system operate out there?
Sure. A seldom known fact, and one that I delight in telling everybody that wants to listen, is that of the global top 100 life science universities by either QS or THE scales, 10 of them are in Australia and New Zealand. That's 10 of 100, and we have a total population of under 30 million. So something's weird down here. Something's in the water down here. The universities, therefore, by way of answer to your question, they're strong. They are quite strong in their basic science, in their early stage translational science. Where they come unstuck is in that linkage to the big markets, that linkage and understanding of global business. Government pumps a lot of money in as well. And because we were both, Australia and New Zealand were both agricultural nations originally, they were food baskets for Europe. We actually have very strong life sciences that stemmed over 150 years ago from a strong agricultural science, but that's brought in genomics, it's brought in proteomics, it's brought in a whole lot of pretty modern, sophisticated disciplines. One of the things the government does, which most countries in the world are a little envious of, is that the Australian government patronises R&D with, I guess they call it a tax credit, but in truth, it's a simple subsidy of 42%. So if you spend $1 in Australia, New Zealand in Australia on R&D, the government will make that $1.42. So a lot of global companies like that, and they come down here and either patronise local research or even set up a subsid. As long as it's a majority-owned local subsid, it'll qualify for that money.
And if you stratify the companies, Andrew, is there a because the mad thing about life sciences, as we've experienced, because we meet a lot of people, I mean, life sciences seems to be tech bio, biotech, and what we call adjacent bio. So in other words, fintech fintech people have decided to be in life sciences. I suppose the question I'm trying to get my head around is there, if you stratify the groups, is there a single theme that really is more, are they big in therapeutics, are they big in tech bio, what's the sort of scale? Is it hundreds of companies or is it tens?
Sure. Because of that background I mentioned earlier, in your terminology, our number one niche will be the bio side. So people developing drugs, understanding biological processes, developing therapeutics, all of those things are that's the larger segment. Not far behind that, and we actually have, to our credit, we have bred some of the global giants in respiratory device medicine and hearing devices. So 2 global giants have come out of our territory there. So we do have a fairly vigorous, I think you might have called it a tech bio area. And in that, I absolutely include digital. But I'll make a funny comment now, and that is part of the, dare I say, the island culture, the need to be self-sufficient. What that means is that our entire innovation ecosystem is a little bit left field. And the reason for that is that we don't have the giant German focus on engineering, the giant Boston focus on biotech. We don't have a lot of those sorts of parts to our ecosystem. Instead, we have what I might call random brilliant inventors.
Yeah.
Those random brilliant inventors will come definitely out of the bio area, but they could equally come out of digital health. Recently had a startup that was bought by Pfizer because it had invented a way to use your cell phone to diagnose respiratory conditions by the sound of your cough. Now that sounds rather weird until you think about, oh, Granny, I listened to your cough. It doesn't sound like you're very healthy there. That's true. You can actually tell things by sound. And a company called ResApp was just purchased by Pfizer for quite a lot of money because it had come up with this idea of building an algorithm to diagnose respiratory disease, upper, lower, and etiology solely by the sound of your cough in your cell phone. So Tony, we do come up with weird stuff, and that's part of the enjoyment of being down here. We come up with weird stuff all the time.
So that, which sounds fantastic, because it feels raw and untapped and terrific. I suppose the question is I mean, before the pandemic, none of us used Zoom, so Zoom, it felt like a long way away. Now I can Zoom anywhere, and Zooming Graham, it's not always great Zooming Graham, but Zooming Graham and Zooming you seems no different, other than I have to get up maybe earlier. So has really the Zoom world, is it changed everything, Andrew?
No, and I say that carefully as someone who used to burn 1 million air miles and then had to stop like a stone, like we all did in 2020. I would say the following, Tony. I'd say that what Zoom has done, and Teams, is it's actually made the communication easier, but it hasn't made the intelligence any stronger. And I say that carefully. What I'm saying is that you could Zoom me, and you could Zoom the University of Melbourne's tech transfer office, and you could Zoom that ResApp company I mentioned. But if you're actually out there wondering how to engage in the ecosystem and who to engage with, you're still pretty much blind. In fact, you're a little bit blinkered by Zoom because you're talking one person at a time. What our team does, and we're 20 strong, what our team does is we've developed, I guess you'd call it a network of networks. So we pick people that are bilingual. They must be able to speak science and business. We pick people that are experienced in industry. And when they join our team, they all bring their networks with them. So if you, Tony, were to ask me almost by name any single company in Australia and New Zealand, I'd be not 6 degrees of separation, I'd be 1.5 degrees of separation away from that party. And what's more, I'd talk back to you about what that person did last year that failed, what their board are thinking about them, why their lab people are slow getting their clinical phase 2 done. That's the sort of intel that Zoom cannot replace.
So, so tell me more about that. So what have you got some examples of how that operates? Sure.
For a number of the global corporates, and we've now worked, I can say with pride, we've worked for a majority of the global top 20 pharma and a super majority of the global top 20 consumer health companies, etc. down the trail. So we are popular among the globals. And what they do, Tony, to answer your question, is they come to us and say, either we're curious about your region, or we've seen a couple of good things and we wonder if there's more, or sadly, sometimes they come to us and say, we saw something 4 years ago, but we never could get the relationship off the ground. It was difficult. But whatever it is, at the end of the conversation, once we persuade them of the fear of missing out, which is a very big thing, people can't ignore 10 of the global top 100 life science universities. Then once we do that, then we tend to work, we are a professional consultancy firm, so we work for fees, and we tend to work for them for the long term, Tony. We tend to engage with global corporates over not months, but years. In fact, we're an 8-year-old company with quite a few 7-year-old clients. And the reason is because once they understand how we can turn over stones down under, how we can bring deals, not just all deals, but bring the perfect focused deal in their therapeutic area or their need, and that we can present it to them without fear or favor by being critical analysts. We can say, these are the weaknesses of that deal and these are the strengths. Then they become a wee bit addicted to that. They like that.
From our events we've run with Australia, Andrew, that the ecosystem seems awesome. The bit that always seems to be the area for improvement is venture, because there only apparently is 2 or 3 big venture firms. So most of it is lifted up by angels and super angel networks. I mean, is that changing?
Yep. It is changing, but your analysis compared to the rest of the world, Tony, is pretty correct. Venture has been a weakness. I ran the country's largest VC that was specialized in the life sciences for 12 years. And if you get the rugby analogy, we were a little bit too far out in front. There was no one to back us up. We were the only player in the space for a long time. That was called BioPacific Ventures. And today, there are still only a small number. However, 2 things have changed that you probably need to be aware of, Tony. One is that the last 2 years has seen an absolute boom. Following the global boom in venture, we followed a year or a year and a half later. And funny statistic, little old New Zealand, which had 0 early stage venture funds interested in our space, has now got 6, and that they all 6 emerged in the last 2 years. What I can say, and this is an interesting story for people in other parts of the world, is that our local stock exchange fills the gap, which is strange and wonderful at the same time, and a little bit weird. The local stock exchange, the ASX, has more early stage life science companies on it than NASDAQ. It actually has more companies that enter at an early stage, and I'm talking about raising 5 million on a 20 million pre-money. I mean, that's tiny compared to NASDAQ or any of the other markets. And that is because in our ecosystem, they fill a strange niche. And although it's a little bit glib, I can say that Australia particularly was born a little bit as a mining nation. And there's a lot of people willing to have a bet on a hole in the ground. And those people have moved into biotech in the last 2 decades, understanding the fairly binary nature of their investment. They are bringing sometimes large sums of money sweeping in from mining to biotech and back to mining, which it's a weird local phenomenon.
I mean, have you tried, Andrew, to put some of these companies in front of European and US VCs?
Oh, have I? Have we tried? Yes.
Yeah.
And we get and I can say this because I am a VC in my past, we get an all too predictable reaction that the VCs are often uncomfortable to invest so far from home, that they are needing to factor in to what there is their comfortable existence. They are needing to factor in currency risk. They are needing to factor in sovereign risk, because sometimes they just don't know how stable or otherwise Australia and New Zealand are. They are needing to factor in difficulty of doing deals, and probably most importantly, difficulty of keeping in touch. Despite what you said about Zoom, you will notice it's quite dark here. And so the VC sitting in San Francisco, Boston, London, Zurich is thinking, oh, I'd like to get in touch with that company. My goodness, it's 2 a.m. I probably will leave it until next week. And that is a very human failing, Tony, but it is true, and it is a problem for our local system and also for people engaging with us. Mm-hmm. And I guess the fact that I'm up now is that's part of what we deliver. We say, we don't care what the time is. We'll tell you how your companies are going. We'll tell you who you need to talk to, but you don't need to do it on 6 phone calls at odd times of day. You can do it at 1. And
Andrew, how do you think in the next 5 years it's going to develop, the ecosystem?
Sure. I'm guilty of having a little rush of blood, because in the last month, there have been a pretty stellar run of deals. I mentioned ResApp before and Pfizer, and there have been a number of deals done between globals and local innovation, reaching into global markets, being acquired by, partnered by. And I think that is representative of the local ecosystem coming of age. A large part of our 10 years has actually been spent educating entrepreneurs about how to do global business, because so many of our companies are first-time entrepreneurs which have never done the deals before, never. And so we actually fill part of that ecosystem. And I'd have to say, the optimist in me says it's getting better all the time. It's actually, it is getting better. Now, Tony, what that means, we're very aware that the rest of the world's getting better too. And all of us, dare I say, particularly down here, we're conscious of China's rapid rise in quality, speed, efficiency. And whereas Australia and New Zealand used to represent a slightly exotic part of the world, the bigger and stronger China gets, the more people may ignore our part of the world. So the locals are getting a bit nervous down here, but still the quality of the gems down here is pretty impressive.
And do you think, just one
Can we
last
make this last question? Yeah.
No, I was just going to make it's a conversation really. You know, this thing about, you know, you might have a great company in Melbourne. Are people do they have the appetite to put a subsidiary or actually put a headquarters in, I don't know, the UK, France or somewhere to access a different ecosystem for greater translation? Do they have that appetite?
Yep. Yeah, they do. Both countries are so small in domestic population, Tony, 20 million or 25 in Australia, 5 in New Zealand, that most companies are born global. In other words, the entrepreneur from day one understands that is their destination, and they're not afraid at all. One of our giant biotech companies moved almost holus bolus into the USA, and that's CSL, a big blood products company. It's very common for people to say, I know we'll have to move.
Well, Andrew, fantastic. I mean, I love it. Fantastic. And Graham has given me the nod. It's a special look that he gives me, which I don't really understand what it means. And then he does something dramatic now.
I know. I'm going to stop the recording to start with. That's going to be dramatic.
First of all, we thank Andrew in the traditional way. And thank you very much, Andrew, for taking your time to come and talk to us. And then once we've done that, then we move. Graham does something with an algorithm, which is in his fingers.